Welcome to Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and today I am so thrilled to be joined by David Goldberg, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Mon Health System. David, thanks for being here this
thank
morning.
you.
Yeah, great to have you here. David Goldberg serves as Mon Health System's President and Chief Executive Officer. David has nearly 20 years of senior healthcare leadership experience. Most recently, he served as Senior Vice President with Highmark Health's Allegheny Health Network, ran 2 hospitals as interim CEO, and former interim president of Highmark Home and Community Services in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. David's extensive healthcare administrative background includes serving as president of 2 hospitals and service line executive for cardiovascular and behavioral health services at Tenet Health's Baptist Health System in San Antonio, Texas. He also served in various senior roles, ending as System Pediatric Vice President and Administrator with Inova Health System at Inova Children's Hospital in Falls Church, Virginia. David earned his master's degree in health systems management from George Mason University and a bachelor's degree in political science from West Virginia University. A recipient of several professional awards, he has remained active in healthcare professionally and in community activities throughout his career. David is the vice chair of Fairmont State University's Board of Governors, serves as chair for Hazel's House of Hope, and is on the board for the West Virginia Hospital Association and American Hospital Association Regional Policy Board. He's also a member of the Morgantown Area Partnership and Marion County Chamber of Commerce. David and his wife, Noelle, who is also a WVU graduate, have 2 daughters, Reagan and Ryan.
Wow.
David!
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for being here. This is awesome.
Now I know why I feel so tired.
I know. You have a lot going on, and I know there are things that you do that are not even in that bio, so we can get into that in the conversation. But I was saying earlier, I think you do such a great job of being in the media to talk about Mon Health, which we will cover today. But I also want to take this opportunity just for people to get to know you a little bit better. Yeah, and especially from a leadership perspective, because I do think your journey is really interesting of how you ended up, in the role that you're in today, which I think you told me 4 years now.
Yeah.
It's your 4 years anniversary. So can you start by just walking through your leadership journey and what brought you to this point today?
Yeah, as I shared, it's a little unorthodox how I got here. Most people who are in healthcare are business people, finance people, clinicians.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from WVU back in the 90s as a political science baccalaureate degree received. And I got involved in not-for-profit work. I wanted to break into politics. I wanted to do political fundraising and work in policy. And it's like investment banking. Unless you know someone, it's hard to break in.
Mm-hmm.
I had opportunities to work with the Sergeant of Arms Office of the Senate
Oh, wow.
right before the Republicans and Newt Gingrich kind of took over with the contract with America.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother's stockbroker knew the Deputy Sergeant of Arms, introduced me, and I got a very entry-level position, and then the change of power happened.
Okay.
And then I got into not-for-profit work, mostly fundraising.
Hmm.
And then years later, I was given the opportunity through my fundraising background to work in medical societies. The Endocrine Society is one, and then applied for a job and got it to be Vice President of Development with a hospital in Northern Virginia called Loudoun Hospital. I did capital campaign consulting before that. One thing led to another, and through that journey, my CEO at the time liked the way I could execute, strategically think, build relationships, thought I would be a really good hospital administrator, and started giving me business opportunities, certificate of public need, service line development, some business development, and then sent me to get my master's at George Mason, which I received, and then worked up the chain, and we merged into a larger health system, Inova Health System in Virginia. They asked me to become Chief Growth and Operations Officer at a smaller hospital within that system, was able to work with the team to turn it around, moved to the Inova Children's Hospital, and then recruited to go to other systems in San Antonio, then to Pittsburgh, and now here. I'm glad to be back in West Virginia.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, and we're glad to have you back. And I think, now a lot of the interviews I've heard from you and of you were related to when you were first starting. So now that you're, 4 years in, if you compare and contrast what you were hoping to accomplish just with what you have thus far. I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I don't think anyone expected coming here 4 years ago, and there were some areas of opportunity. I've always said Mon, and from my days as an undergrad, I knew of Mon General at the time,
Yes.
and I knew how outstanding the clinicians and the clinical aspect of the hospital and the services were. But back when I was here in the 90s, it was the hospital. And as most hospitals and healthcare have really come together to build what I call integrated delivery systems, bring your clinical services in outpatient, your doctor's office, into healthcare hospital to bring continuum of care tighter, Mon had a great journey. The business of doing business was hard, built up a really good system, with Preston Memorial becoming part of Mon Health's system, the anchor, of course, Mon General, or Mon Health Medical Center, eventually Stonewall Jackson Memorial Hospital in Lewis County. And the opportunity came to come 4 years ago to continue to really integrate all the aspects of what the system is into an integrated system, make it easier for the patient to navigate healthcare, continue to invest in the clinical programs that areas of Mon Health were known for. And 4 years later, we still continue to be the leading quality hospital and health system in the state. Were before the merger, we were the 9th largest employer in the state, non-governmental. We continue to grow year after year, but who thought a pandemic would happen in the middle of all of that? And learning in a state like ours with rural communities to navigate access, quality of care during a pandemic, while we're trying to integrate our systems, bring computer technology to integrate the experience to improve for the patient, has been an interesting 4 years. I've learned so much, and I love West Virginia even more now than I did 4 years ago when I started.
Yeah, and if we could go a little deeper on that, because I was thinking about that. I mean, you were probably only, year and a half, 2 years in?
October of 2018 is when I started, and then March 20th of 2020 is when the world ended.
Not even 2 years in. So any perspective on what that experience was like from a leadership perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So the first thing, when the pandemic hit, the first thing, of course, is how do we help partner with health departments? How do we help partner with the state, federal, all of the different resources? But to me, it was how do you keep your staff motivated and try to keep us focus on what they need, because we didn't know what we didn't know when it first hit. You always prepare for, unfortunately, the active shooter drill. You always prepare for regulatory agencies coming in and that you're following policies, procedures to make sure you're always top of your license, regulatory-wise, doing everything correct, and from a patient perspective. But a pandemic that we experienced so quickly, I remember it was November of 2019, and I remember hearing about this, and I remember turning to our staff. I said, let's start staffing up protective equipment. We thought flu would be rough. We thought potentially COVID, but didn't expect it would be a pandemic, but we thought it could be something that really impacts respiratory, and let's be prepared. And we started stocking up earlier, and then January, and then February. And as we saw it and it was mushrooming even more, the staff started to really prepare for whatever we thought we needed to prepare for. And I know that's very vague, but we didn't know.
Well, nobody knew, but you kind of knew something could be coming. Hey, let's figure out how to create some contingencies depending on which direction this goes in.
And we didn't know from a population perspective, how would it infiltrate West Virginia? We're a little isolated compared to some other markets, urban or otherwise, but we'd still have significant international travel coming in through the universities. We're close to Pittsburgh. The great thing about North Central West Virginia, we're 6 to 8 hours from most population centers, whether it's Michigan, whether it's Washington, D.C., New York, those areas, and people come in and out of our state or drive our interstates. So we prepared, and then March 20th came when we closed down a lot of our clinical services. We needed to prepare for whatever hospitalizations would come. Back in early 2000s at the Inova Loudoun, where I was, we had the first case of SARS come through Dulles Airport. So we prepared for that and was at our hospital. Our CEO, Rod Hubers, at the time actually testified on Capitol Hill about that experience back then. So I knew a little, but how do you equate back in the early 2000s to 2020 with what we thought the pandemic could be and how to prepare? We had prepared our staff to take whatever job needed to be done. We did not furlough. We did not lay off one staff member through that.
Wow.
We needed to keep people stable because we wanted people to be assured that we support them, but we also want to make sure we were prepared for whatever would be thrown at us. And I couldn't be more proud of the Mon family and the collaboration across the state with
Yes.
WVU Medicine, with CAMC, with Mountain Health, led by
Yeah.
Secretary Crouch and General Hoyer and the governor, to be able
Yes.
to get us on weekly calls to collaborate. And we still collaborate to this day, even though in some cases we may compete
Sure.
in the healthcare space. But I think we're a stronger healthcare system from it.
Well, and you're all, at the end of the day, you are all generally driving in the same direction of trying to deliver healthcare to West Virginia and, sometimes a little bit beyond the
Yep.
borders of the state as well, which is, I think you talk about integrated health. I mean, that was an opportunity for all of you to come together and really create an integrated opportunity to help West Virginia and
I
serve West
agree.
Virginia.
If you remember when we were doing testing,
Mm-hmm.
we came together with the Monongalia County Health Department, with WVU Medicine and Mon Health, and we all partnered in space WVU Medicine had at the mall to be able to have a center where people come in and get their vaccinations.
Yeah.
We were able to collaborate regionally about how we were going to test people, because we were testing everybody all the time, to be able to know how pervasive it could be. And I think we learned a lot about how we could collaborate. You could put the business side aside and rally around our municipalities, our clinicians, to do always the right thing for our patient. And I've
Yeah.
always said, if you keep the patient in the center of what you do, everything else works itself out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the secret sauce at Mon Health.
So as you think about that experience, how has it maybe impacted your leadership moving forward? Or maybe it hasn't, but I'd be curious to hear.
I remember it was 4 days into the pandemic, and I live in a condo if you could call it a tall building here at the Marriott Hotel. There's some condos above, and my condo looks straight out into town.
Okay.
And usually the hustle and bustle of Morgantown Standard, people over the Westover Bridge and all of those things. And I remember 4 days in, there was not one car on the road. And I was
That's eerie.
separated from my family because they were still in Pittsburgh finishing high school and stuff at the time. And I just remember saying, oh my gosh, the world has stopped.
Yeah.
But then when I felt it, my staff felt it. The
Yes.
doctors felt it. So I believe to this day, you can't communicate enough about your why. Staying connected to what we're seeing and why we're seeing it and when we're seeing it, to hopefully translate it in a way that they understand.
Yes.
I always say it's not only the staff I'm worried about, it's the community, it's the patients, it's the family members of our staff, because they give the wind in the sails to keep people going. And I say this all the time. Buildings don't treat people, people treat people.
Yes.
That's the secret sauce. You could have the most gorgeous buildings and still not be connected to your patients.
Right.
I'm a former Shriners kid.
Oh.
1979, my mother had to leave me in Philadelphia, 2 hours away, came back and forth every day, drove 2 hours each way to see me when I had surgery in a very old, dilapidated building, but I got the best care. We went to 12, 15 different referral sites to find out what was wrong with me. They found it.
Wow.
At that time, Shriners didn't bill for healthcare service. It was all gratis.
Okay.
And I was a recipient of that. And I remember that experience, sitting in a ward of beds. I remember being discharge planning in one night because the doctor said, why is Goldberg still here? And now here we are in 2022. It's important that we don't forget those experiences, to remember what it's like to be the patient or the family. In West Virginia, our patients travel from hours away for a cardiac catheterization or open heart surgery or an oncology procedure. And we have to make sure we make it as easy, as customer friendly, as welcoming as you can call healthcare to be.
Sure.
So we don't lose track of why we do what we do.
Yeah. And understanding the emotion behind it too, because think about, I'm not going to project, but as a child, that's probably kind of scary to be in a hospital and not knowing what's going on and am I going to be okay? And, remembering probably what that felt
Absolutely.
like.
And I was lucky because I remember I was 7 at the time, and I didn't realize, I think in some respects, how impactful it was on me now that I'm much older than 7, and my mother and my father and my grandparents traveling back and forth. My mother and my father were divorced. So my mother was supporting up north 2 other children that she had to be there for. She lost her job while this was happening. So she had no income coming in. A son, thank God the medical care was gratis, but 2 hours away, 2 other children. Her parents ended up passing away 13 minutes apart in 1980,
Oh my
literally
goodness.
unexpected. So
Whoa.
here's the strongest person I know, and she's coming back and
Yeah.
forth. I've never forgotten it. So I think it's important today, as a father of 2 daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and 4,000 employees. Now we're part of Vandalia Health. We're 12,000
Mm-hmm.
employees. My job is to be an advocate for the patient, the advocate for the staff, to make sure we don't forget why we do what we do. And it's always
Yes.
about quality of care, service, and everything else will follow from it. The money will follow to
Mm-hmm.
invest into our people, invest into our programs, invest into our facilities, but it starts with patient care interaction at the very beginning.
Yeah. And I can't agree with you more about reinforcing the why, because I think, regardless of what the mission of an organization is and how powerful it can be, that gives people purpose. But sometimes people forget, we get busy, we get in our day-to-day life,
Mhm.
and we get burnout or whatever, and frustrated in our job, and we forget why we do what we do. And those reminders, I think, are so helpful and
I
important.
go to, I try, we now do virtual orientation. So every employee comes in, we do orientation, and then they learn their specific
Yeah.
tasks in their department. And I work hard to attend every one. And
Wow.
I welcome them to Mon. I want to make sure they hear from me. The expectation is, don't let us Mon you too quickly.
Wait, say that. Don't let us mind you too
Yeah,
quickly. What does that mean?
people have come from various environments, whether other
Yeah.
hospitals, other offices, other industries. You learned a lot from where you came from. Let us learn from you. However, we have
Ooh.
rules and regulations to keep us safe, and I always say that. There's a reason why they're in place, but let us, if you see something that doesn't make sense, raise the flag so we can learn from
Mm.
you. You're only as good as the last idea.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and we've had people who have raised, and I have a gentleman who joined us 2.5 years ago. I believe he had legacy with us, and his wife was pregnant. And he reached out to us and he said, is there any way that we can look about the spouse getting leave the same as the person who delivered their baby? And of course, historically, you gave the anywhere from 8 to 16
Yes.
weeks of
Yes.
leave to the mom.
To the mom. Yeah.
Yes, we should, because as a dad, it would have been great to have a couple weeks to be able
Yes.
to be home to help my wife. My wife
Mhm.
had perinatal depression with our first child.
Mm.
Everything great today. She's the best mom on the planet, and my daughters are the best, but I'm partial.
Aw.
Yes, we did, and we put that in place, and that came from an idea of one of our staff.
I
And
love
now we
that.
offer that to the dad or the partner just as equally as the parent who delivered their child. And I think that those are things we need to stay front and center. One, to be the employer of choice.
Yeah.
Two, to be the provider of choice for the
Mhm.
community and the people that give their all to take care of our community and our neighbors.
Mhm. And true or false, you give your phone number out
I
at
do. It's on my
orientation?
business card.
Wow.
It's the same number I've had since my days in Virginia. I know some people change their phone number to the prefix of where they are. No, it's still
Yeah.
the 703 number I've had since cell phones came out. I give it to everyone at orientation. I give them my cell phone number.
Mhm.
Call me. I always say, if you call or text me, make sure I know where you're coming from. So if I'm going to send you food, I know where I'm sending it. But the other aspect is I believe in the chain of command. You can raise it to
Yeah.
me. I'm going to help facilitate, but I want you to always feel you have a connection from the very top to know we're here to support you as the individual,
Mhm.
do an excellent job for our patients, for the community we are vested with in confidence to
Yeah.
provide excellent care and service.
Well, you make a really important point, and I'm glad you brought up the chain of command piece, because I think in giving your number, you're certainly showing an openness and an interest to staying connected, being aware of what
Mhm.
ideas or concerns or hopefully positive
Mhm.
feedback people have sometimes. But also, I think it is important that you recognize, hey, don't skip over necessarily the proper channels, because you would in some ways, diminish the role of your other leaders in the organization.
And I always say that is, if you're going to
Mhm.
share with me, I'm going to share it back. I had an
Yeah.
employee the other day who sent a note to me about a policy about leave.
Mhm.
One of our departments said we can't let everyone have off at the same time. We have to stagger out based on priority, based on who did it first, and et
Yeah.
cetera. And this employee was very concerned about it. Well, it got emailed to me.
Mhm.
I got HR involved and that department director. And I said, what's the context of the why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing it? And it's exactly that. Well, did we communicate the why? It isn't about we want to say no to you to take off. You deserve to take your
Mhm.
time off. But we can't have all of the people in the department off at the same time, because then we can't service our patients' need
Mhm.
to either schedule or get them authorized by insurance or what have you.
Right.
And then we communicated it back. So it came to me.
Yeah.
I got into the queue of the people who should review it,
Right.
educate that employee of the why, but also, again, are we communicating in a way that people understand? And I think in
Yes.
today's age, a text message and an email is not the only way to communicate. You have
Yes.
to make the time and reinforce it. Staff meetings, one-on-ones. I started, just to stay connected with our staff, I send a birthday card to every employee, every volunteer across Mon every
Wow.
month. We have about 4,000 people.
I
My
was going to
hand
say, plus
gets tired.
volunteers. You have a lot of volunteers too.
We do. We have
Very
hundreds.
active.
So I started doing birthday cards. So I hand sign because I don't believe in the auto pen.
The stamp and
And
yeah.
people see that and they understand. Well, my wife
Mhm.
now helps me. I have a little tremor in my hand.
Oh.
When I write, my hand shakes. So you can't read me anyway. I'm like a doctor. You can't read my handwriting. But I sign it. And now my wife, Noelle, helps me sign them.
Oh.
And my daughters help me sign them because
Yeah.
I want that connection once a year that I'm
Mhm.
thinking of you on your birthday. And
Mhm.
it's funny, I read about 5 months after I started doing that, when I got here 4 years ago, I read in Inc. about another CEO who travels the world and he does it.
Yes.
And I laugh, ooh, I was ahead of this guy.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that people know I'm thinking of you and I want to
Yeah.
celebrate who you are and the contribution you make each and every day.
Yeah.
People don't come to work to give C+ work.
No.
They, in their own scale, they
Mhm.
come to give an outstanding A performance. Sometimes we
Mhm.
fall short. And I had a boss, John Paul, who was our previous CEO at Allegheny and one of the original founders of UPMC. He said, if you don't strive for perfection, you'll never get there. And that's a high bar. And
Mhm.
I hold myself to a high bar. I hold my people to a high bar. I'm
Mhm.
also realistic to know you were not always going to get there.
Sure.
But in healthcare, if you shoot for anything less than perfection, an outcome unwarranted, unintended could happen. So how do you
Mhm.
keep that mindset in front of people
Yes.
time in and time out? But I also am realistic to know, and I hope honest enough to know we're not going to always hit it. But if you
No, we're
don't
human
strive for it,
beings. Yeah.
yes, but you know, we have safety issues happening around us 24/7, 365. You have to stay into the detail and cross your T's and dot your I's consistently,
Mhm.
or an unintended consequence of an error,
Yeah.
harm, or lack of communication can occur
Mhm.
to a patient or a family member. And I think I take that very seriously.
Well, yeah, but and to your point though, nobody's really coming to work to be a C player. You know, they probably, I would hope, most people, I would say, are striving and driving for perfection or the best outcome they can absolutely get. And so I think sometimes just reminding people again of, you know, their purpose, their why, you know, and explaining the context. I love that you talked about having the conversation with someone, not only just to say, here's our answer coming down on, you know, from high, yes or no, but here's the why behind it, because I do think that gets lost a
Yep.
lot, especially in the written context of
So,
emails and text messages.
so I'll give you a great example. For 4 years, we have given market-based adjustment raises, merits, whatever word you want to use. And we're in an inflationary period.
Yeah.
We can't give a 6, 8, 9% raise.
20.
I wish
Yeah.
I could. You know,
Right.
it's a hard time in healthcare.
Mhm.
Inflation is our enemy.
Mhm.
Costs are going up. I can't just pass an increased cost in a manufactured device
Right.
on, because we have locked in contracts with our insurance companies, Medicare. You get a little bit, but not enough to cover the cost. So we just shared yesterday to our employees, we're investing $3 million into market or merit adjustments across our enterprise.
Whoa.
There are still people going to say it's not enough. And you want to
Right.
know something? It's probably not. I know gas is up.
Mhm.
I know personally groceries are up.
Mhm.
During the pandemic, because we have not hit all of our financial targets, I took a pay cut. I did it when
Wow.
COVID hit. I did it even now today. I took a 4% pay cut.
Mhm.
Publicly, I've shared that because I understand it, and I'm not hitting our financial goals. I need to help my organization. I didn't ask anyone to do that with me. I
Right.
gave up part of incentive compensation that I'm eligible for
Mhm.
because I need to help our organization weather the storm. I'm not doing it to get patted on the back. I'm doing it because it's the right
It's
thing
the
to
right
do.
thing to do.
So I'm not getting a raise. I gave money up so others who need it,
Mhm.
and I'm paid well. So don't cry for me, Argentina.
Right.
But at the other end, I still have responsibilities home. 2 girls in college.
Yes.
You know, and everything comes along with it.
Right.
But I need to take care of my staff. I put it out there. We have not raised health insurance premiums on our employees for 4 years.
Oof. Yeah.
So not only have we seen insurance costs go up and your cost of care go up, we have not passed it to you and we're giving you your raise. And in some cases, some more, some a little less, but we're trying to be always competitive to make it. The most important thing is to give you wherewithal to support your family. We also know, the literature tells you, most people leave a job not because of pay, but because they
Yes.
don't feel valued.
Yes.
They don't understand the strategic direction of where you're going, and you're not excited. So if you're not excited, you don't feel vested or valued, you start looking.
Right.
Money is important, but not always the key driver, but it's what they cite the most.
It is,
but it's not
you're right.
all.
It's not the number one driver. And I think, you doing those things shows your commitment to them. Because I do think, we're in an interesting time now. I talk a lot about my father's generation. You would work for the same organization for 40 years, 45 years. And there was a mutual loyalty there it was maybe stated or unstated that, you pledge your loyalty to us and we will pledge our loyalty back to you. And it's a little bit different, in a gig economy or in an environment where, you've got some generations now that are expecting to move every, 2 to 3 years in their jobs. And so employers maybe aren't necessarily feeling that loyalty anymore. Employees aren't feeling necessarily. They kind of think, hey, if this company hits hard times, I'm going to be out the door. So why am I going to pledge my loyalty to you if you're not going to take care of me in that circumstance?
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot of distrust that's going on there. And so I do think being able to say, listen, I am committed to you. I'm committed to making this organization successful. We as a leadership team are doing these things to make Mon Health sustainable into the future. And we recognize that maybe, it's not everything in your mind that you think is possible, but you're also explaining the business part of it, which I think is important for people to understand as well.
And the other part is, as you're strategically growing, the other side is, okay, you're like, I had a staff member say, oh, we're not getting more money, but you're paving the roads on our campus. Yes, I am. The roads in Morgantown are questionable. A lot of potholes. And I think our county commission, our cities are doing an excellent job to try to keep up with infrastructure with limited funding because of how we're set up. And I couldn't be more pleased. And some of the roads look like they were when I was here in the 90s. But that being said, we're trying to focus. I have to keep my campus up to date related to how we look. To maintain it, including the roads. So yes, I can do both. I could still give you your raise, your market adjustment, wherewithal to get your paycheck, but the roads to get in have to be maintained.
Yeah, there's certain maintenance things that
Of
just
course.
have to happen too.
But some people don't see it. They saw me paving the roads, but then I'm not getting enough
well, you're
money
afford
hourly.
to pave the roads. Why aren't you?
I remember someone made a comment one time. We were painting a particular area. We built a new hospital in Marion County. You could do all that, but what about us getting paid? I went, yes and yes. If we don't grow to improve access, to be able to make sure we're providing the level of care that particular community might need help with, and we're not opening up opportunity to bring that business into us, how do you think you get your paycheck? Good, bad, or indifferent, healthcare, for the most part, is still a fee-for-service business. It is a perverse economic model where I get paid for someone's illness. You don't get compensated as much on the front end to keep you well. Now, insurance companies, Medicare are going to what we call value, paying you for value, that your outcomes should predicate the way we pay you rather than how many times they come in and get a surgery, how many times they come in and see a doctor. And you have to straddle both. I want people to get in to see their doctors, get their surgeries, get their physical therapy, get their cardiac rehab where they need to be. But not everything has to be done in a hospital. But that's where you drive most of your revenue. So it's a perverse model.
It is.
Now in our environment, 30% of what we do is waste in healthcare. And 25% of our gross domestic product is spent on healthcare. Those are unsustainable models. So how do we partner with you, the patient, to own your healthcare? How do we help you to fix it? And then as we partner with our insurance companies, if we can reduce the cost of care, we can improve your health outcome, and we can get a little bit of that savings. It helps us reinvest into our people, into advancing our programs, into our facilities. It's a balancing act. And that's the part most people in the regular community, I have my insurance card, I'll just go to the ER. Maybe you need to go to your primary care doctor first.
Absolutely.
Maybe you go to the urgent care before the ER. But then as the hospital administrator, I'm losing some of that revenue in the
Right.
emergency room.
Right.
We have a group of surgeons in our community that partnered with us to create a surgery center. We do same-day joints. It's Joint Commission accredited. It's been it's a distinction honor from Highmark's West Virginia Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's 300 cases a month that used to come to the hospital that now is in a surgery center we're a partner with that's reimbursed less than hospital. Yeah, it stings. It's the right thing to do for those doctors, those
For the
patients,
healthcare system.
and the patients. They get a better experience in that outpatient environment than sometimes in the hospital. So we have to balance that overall. And again, keep the patient in the center of what you do, and everything else works its way out. It's a very profitable entity. The patients were at the 95th percentile in patient satisfaction.
Wow.
95th percentile.
Wow.
Very limited infections, very limited bounce back, meaning from procedure to the hospital for higher level care. And the patients are happy, the doctors are happy, the staff is happy, the community is happy. And we are pushing the envelope on being community minded and being responsible in the healthcare dollar.
Yeah, and connecting all of it. So I am so fascinated. So you said 4,000. How, in terms of your employee structure, I mean, from your leadership lens, how many employees are we talking about that you're ultimately responsible for?
So I wear two hats now since our merger. So I'm still president and CEO here at Mon Health. So I have just about 4,000 employees. And then there's various doctors who use our facilities who aren't employed by us. So we have hundreds of other providers across our hospitals. As Vandalia Health that we just created with the merger with CAMC in the beginning of September, we have 12,000 employees across our organization, and we're the second largest non-governmental employer. And I'm executive vice president of Vandalia. I have the honor and privilege to work with Dave Ramsey, the CEO of 22 years of CAMC, who's now our Vandalia CEO. Jeff Sandine is our CFO and executive vice president. Dr. Glenn Crotty is an executive vice president and chief operating officer of CAMC. And I could go on and on of the wonderful people at Mon and CAMC that have come together to be an additional voice on statewide healthcare and to fix our healthcare problems and improve affordability, reduce cost, improve our outcomes, because together we're stronger together than individually.
Yeah. And I think mergers are so interesting because obviously there's a value that's expected that you're going to get out of that opportunity to bring, it's that math equation that always would throw me off when they'd say, 2 + 2 = 5. And I'd be like, but really, that extra value that you get out of combining as a group.
Well, you've been through that.
To,
you were through that in your past life with banks. It first starts. Hoppy Kercheval interviewed Dave Ramsey and I recently and said, David, I see a quote here. You said you're going to reduce cost. You never reduce. I'm paraphrasing now. Reduce costs in a merger. Well, we are. We have two separate supply chains. We have two separate sets of contracts. Now we can look at the contracts and say, our pharmacy distribution contract with X vendor versus yours is richer or lower. We could come together and negotiate what happens when we reduce that cost. It goes back, we reduce our cost structure, which means those self-insured organizations who go with an insurance company who price it based on the cost of care, we can reduce it. Then that cost gets pushed down to that insurance company that gets pushed down to the self-employed people who insure. Yes, we can reduce costs. I don't want to charge more than what it costs to be able to provide the service. And in some cases, the variability of your providers, the services you contract for. Now we have 12,000 employees. I buy services from lots of different providers. Maybe I don't have to keep doing that into the future, which reduces my cost structure. That's a benefit of a merger. In our case, we have academic, residency, fellowships with CAMC, minimally at Mon. Now we can recruit our own as an organized organization. We are a merged group. So now, if you don't want to live in the southern part of the state when you finish your education, you have opportunity in the north. Where people in the north, I have family down in Philippi or I am in Buchanan or down in Kanawha County. Now, all of a sudden, you have opportunity. So now together, we can address those areas to make it an even more dedicated employer choice.
Which is great. And I think, again, obviously for the patients, you provide more opportunities for care as well.
Yes.
Now, from an employee perspective, and you and I have talked about this before offline, but sometimes these mergers can be a little bit bumpy in terms
Sure.
of trying to transition to a new system, new expectations. What is your hope, or if you can share even any tips with other leaders who go through, because I know you've been through this before,
Mhm.
just from a leadership perspective, how to lead people through this
Well,
kind of a
well, I
change?
think the first thing is communicate, communicate, communicate. You
Mhm.
cannot take for granted the email, the text. Um, you know, Morgantown is 2 hours and 21 minutes. Yes, exactly 2 hours and 21 minutes from CAMC, the main office.
Mhm.
And you can't take, you're distant. And you
Yes.
can't let insecurities feed because you're not in the throes of with these people each and every day.
Mhm.
So you can't let the thoughts in your head feed into insecurity. And
Yes.
I'm a big believer, ask the question. The dumb question is the one you don't ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if something comes across, ask why,
Yeah.
respectfully,
Yeah. Or
and
hey, what did you
hopefully,
mean by that
and
when you said that?
hopefully your partners understand the why is not to be an obstructionist or it's to defend the
Yes.
status quo, it's clarify. It's
Mhm.
very easy in a merger that either side of those new partners have representations of what they think the reality is.
Mhm.
Our job as leaders is to translate that and give clarity and perspective.
Yeah.
And I am trying to empower my people to say, tell your story, tell your why. Don't be an obstructionist and don't defend the status quo because
Mhm.
that's not why we came. We came together to be better together, to
Yeah.
be able to harness strengths
Mhm.
and learnings together to make us better. Yes,
Mhm.
it's about scale. Great example, CAMC went live with their computer system 5, 6 years ago, and it was a very bumpy experience with that particular provider. They, over the last 5 years, have learned a great deal to optimize their system. Mon,
Fantastic.
we went with the same computer system in 2020.
Oh,
We had issues, still have issues, 2 years with the pandemic,
right.
going into it, finding
That's
IT
rough timing.
people. It was
Mhm.
interesting when we decided to do it. Mon was on that system, but we upgraded to a new version. But all of our variable clinics that are based out of Morgantown had their own electronic health records, and we put everyone on the same platform.
Wow.
So we are learning from it, and we know we're not charging for everything. We know that there
Mhm.
are gaps in how it was built, as with all computer systems. Now we have a partner who lived through it who can guide us on what they
Perfect.
learned 5 years ago to make us stronger and better.
Yeah.
That's part of the benefit of these collaborations. You can't let your ego get in the way and try to
Mm-mm.
defend. No
Mm-mm.
one's saying you did anything wrong. We're teaching
Right.
you or showing you what you missed because we lived through it.
Yes,
That's
it's that
part
wisdom.
it's part of that reinforcing the why. Part of my corporate
Mhm.
responsibilities are integration, service line development, external affairs for the new Vandalia. Well, we're
Mhm.
better to talk about it and share. And every idea we've talked about, I couldn't be more pleased with our partners and the leadership of Dave and Jeff Sandine and Glenn and various other vice presidents at the Mon level and the Vandalia level that are
Mhm.
coming together to work through how do we harmonize titles, basic in a merger. Doesn't mean we're going to pay the same in
Yes.
the north to the south because
Yes.
regionally and cost of living are a little different. But what's
Mhm.
the parameters of how we come up with compensation? If we're
Mhm.
going to hire a doctor, what do you look at and how do you look at to be consistent to meet regulatory appropriateness of what we pay and the structure of a compensation deal or contract
Yeah.
with a provider? Same with a vice president. We're learning from each other. We have a new board. We have members from Legacy Mon Health System, Legacy CAMC, who've reconstituted the board from a governance
Hmm.
perspective. So you have two groups of board members who have done things in their organizations their own way. Now we're coming together. So how do we do it the Vandalia way?
Yes. And
Um,
what is the Vandalia way?
and we're 2 months into it, just shy
Mhm.
of 2 months. So we're learning.
Mhm.
It's frustrating for all because, the way you did business yesterday is not the way you do business today,
Yeah.
but it's all, I believe, in culture. The other thing I talked about communication 3, and most importantly, is why are we doing what we're doing?
Mhm.
It's okay to ask that why. I think all of us know the more times you ask why, you really get to the root cause of
Oh yeah.
why you're
Yes.
doing it, how you can do it to get clarity in the
Yes.
purpose. So I'm
Yes.
a big believer in why, and my
Mhm.
staff will tell you they roll their eyes, but I use the word really a lot. So it could be really, really, really. And now they're learning my really of why because I'm
Uh-huh.
trying to always understand. My wife will say, "You're such a micromanager." I believe I have great people around me to do their jobs. My job is
Yeah.
to ask the why so I'm informed and educated to
Ask the right
support them in their
questions.
decisions.
Yeah.
Or I've been around the block at my young age with different organizations, different geographies, different perspectives. let me lend what I heard or I saw here, as I would expect as I started the conversation. People coming from other places are coming from there. Let us learn from you. When you're stuck in doing the same thing always, you're always going to get the same result.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And it's so interesting because as I sit here and listen to you, I think about with that many employees. First of all, I don't know that you sleep because it seems like you would be really busy given your day job and then your community activities that you do as well. But what is a typical day in the life like for you, just in that leadership capacity?
In the good old days, I'd get up around 4:30. I'd exercise. I haven't run. I'm a runner, but I haven't run in about a year. So I need to get back in to take care of myself from a health perspective better. A little busy the last couple years, but I get up in the morning. I exercise and I scan what's going on. I listen to all the local news. I read the national news. I'm on listservs on healthcare and policy. I get in the office around 6:30 in the morning. I try to get through my emails. I try to kind of set for the day. And then meetings start around 7:30 because in my cases, many of my doctors, I need to meet with them or community members before they're in the throes of their day. Because once it's the middle of the day, they're taking care of patients. And then there's budget meetings typically, and then we're looking at regulatory and we're looking at different quality issues. Typical meetings. Unfortunately, we're a meeting-prone environment in healthcare, and I'm trying to break that up to let's meet when we need to. I have one-on-ones with all of my direct reports, at least monthly, if not more often than that, just so we stay connected, and the agenda is always their agenda. I don't come in and start off, unless there's something burning in my mind I need to talk about, tell me what's going on in your world. What is it you need from me? Keep me, up to speed on recruitment strategies, cost management, quality, regulatory, those types of things. And I do that all throughout the month. Then I have a lot of board meetings. We have 4 hospitals with boards. We have a system board now with the Vandalia board, some of the community boards. I'm probably 30 to 40 hours a month in board meetings, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
I do a report to our boards by pillar. We have 6 pillars of performance, and I, throughout the month, keep activities going up, and I send it at the end of the month with a preamble. So they know what's going on if I get hit by the proverbial bus. Here's what's going on in quality safety. Here's what's going on in people and culture. Here's what's going on in integration and efficiency, stewardship, strategic growth, and provider-led. So they know our recruitments. They know what's going on, and I send that out.
That's really interesting. I don't feel like a lot of CEOs have that level of engagement with their board. It's kind of like, well, we'll have our quarterly meetings or monthly meetings whenever the right cadence is, and I'm going to give them just enough information that they need. But I sometimes notice almost a tension there. So it seems like you're much more proactive.
I try. I got feedback in one of my reviews from my board that they felt I could communicate a little more. I think I over-communicate, but you forget sometimes the vantage point of your audience. So I take that, and I started doing it a couple years ago, and I keep the same email every month. So it goes back from when I started at the very bottom all the way. And I just add on. So it's an archive of everything, and it's broken up by pillar. And I include my management team on there. All of our boards get it. And again, I have hospital boards. I have system committees and system boards. They all get it together because I go to all of these meetings, but sometimes I forget to share it one to another, or we got this regulatory award. We've recruited XYZ. This new doctor is starting with us, a new clinical advancement. And I add it throughout the month and I send it out and they get it. And I have board members who call me after and say, can you explain this? That's heartwarming that they're reading it. Because they want to know. And healthcare, any business, is so complex. You have to be able to educate in a way that they feel comfortable. I'm a big believer in governance, noses in, fingers out. A governance board is not managing the day-to-day. That's why they hire your management team and your CEO. But I work with the pleasure of now Dave Ramsey, but also our boards. And I need them to know what I'm working on or what we're doing holistically and why we're making the decisions we're doing. And you can't communicate that enough. And I don't believe the quarterly update's enough to keep people in this environment up to speed on the why.
And if you want to have a good relationship and good levels of engagement, they have a role too. A board has a role and they need to be informed. And of course, you're on a lot of boards, so you
Yeah.
recognize that, which is probably helpful. But I mean, they need a certain level of information to do their job the
Without
best
a
way
doubt.
they can.
They are the fiduciary responsible for the overall organization, whether it's a for-profit entity or a not-for-profit entity. You mentioned I'm on Fairmont State's board.
Yeah.
I don't run the university and I don't want to.
Right.
The management team, the president of the university, they run it, but we are appointed by the governor, ratified by the Senate, to make sure that we are giving perspective on accountability and governance. The day-to-day is the management team.
Yes.
But we do have a responsibility to the communities because it's a public institution. Hazel's House of Hope, same thing. The West Virginia Hospital Association, same thing. We have the management teams in place. So I hope in those interactions it reinforces how I preach the noses in, fingers out, because I shouldn't be in. Sometimes you get deeper because you have a question, something's up, and your board has to be more active, but it shouldn't be the normal pattern. It should be occasionally.
Yeah.
If not, then you have to work with your management team to satisfy the whys. Why is this happening? We as a board need to make sure we're comfortable because we're ultimately responsible from a governance, regulatory perspective, and maintain continuity between management and governance.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for watching Leadership Rediscovered. There is too much great conversation to pack into one episode, so we are going to split this into 2 parts. Please be sure to join in and listen to part 2, which will launch next week.